having a lot of problems with X spaces today. So, hoping people can hear us. I invited our guest Griff to speak. I've invited Erica to speak. Can you hear us, Erica? Erica?
There we go. Hello.
Yay, okay.
Hey.
Oh, man. I don't know what's going on.
Technology without snafus.
Especially Spaces seems to be particularly snafu-y. And I see that the voice is a listener. So I think that's Mike on there. So I'm inviting him. This is crazy. I don't know why he was having so much problems because he's here now.
Oh.
Hopefully, I invited him. Hopefully he can get through. Hi there, little pitapotamus. I have a little pitapotamus right here. Hello. I want a pitapotamus for Christmas.
You have a good voice, Susan.
For active range, trained in the opera. Yeah.
We should one day do what we don't know about each other.
I know. Well, it's I've always told you that I played pretty much every ingenue in Rodgers and Hammerstein and Lerner and Lowe. I was Maria in West Side Story. You name the part, I played it. Eliza Doolittle, Laurie in Oklahoma 3 times. So then I, got into opera, sang opera, and then I decided I wanted to join a rock band, much to the chagrin of my opera teacher. So I ended up doing that, and she wanted to get me into she had sung with the San Francisco Opera, and there was a young talent, kind of a thing for people with talent in their, teens and early 20s. And so she wanted me to do that. My mom didn't want me going, by myself, typical Italian mom. And so I did a rock band instead.
Huh. What do you know?
There you go. I just invited Frank as a speaker. I invited the voice to speak. Okay, this one looks pretty stable, so I'll go ahead and invite people to join us.
Okay.
Mike.
And how about me? Can you hear Frank?
Yep, can hear you. Griff, I've invited you to speak. Hello, Griffin. How come he can't, why does it say listener? How come it says listen? Okay. Oh, Griffin's there. Okay.
I'm here.
All right, wonderful. So Mike still seems to be...
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't know what's going on with Mike. The voice is there listening. Mike, maybe you should try just as yourself on your own account, because I don't know. I keep asking you to speak and giving you the chance, sending you the invite to speak, and it doesn't seem to be working. So what do we want to start with today?
Oh, gosh. Well, there's so much. My gosh, I'm just trying to think. There's the fun in the marina with the project. That would be one.
Well, I think today, because we have guests who are public safety involved people.
Let's keep that.
Yeah, that's what we're going to focus on today.
There we go. Well, who doesn't want public safety as a big topic? So,
And, I guess, Frank, let's just get a little update from you, and then we'll get an update from Griffin.
Okay. I'm not going to talk about any specific crimes in the last week, but I'm going to talk about crime overall, if that's okay.
Yep.
I've said this before, my information is about a week out of date, but in the last 3 years, our crime in San Francisco, based on the 10 categories that the FBI tracks, is down 48%. I should also say that violent crimes are down so significantly too. and all this is almost phenomenal. I guess we wouldn't have guessed this, that crime would be down this much in 3 years. The homicide rate, and that's through October. I haven't seen the November numbers, but the homicide rate is the lowest in 70 years, since 1954. Again, that may have changed. There have been some homicides in the last month or so. I should also say that, excuse me, homicide rates change much more than the other ones. First of all, of course, they're just it's a relatively small number, and homicides get changed to manslaughter, or an attempted homicide will be changed to murder if the victim dies. But those numbers are all very significant, and we attribute it to 3 or 4 different factors. One, San Franciscans and San Francisco businesses have changed their tactics. You know, you go into a Safeway or a pharmacy, and you'll see that a lot of it is under lock and key, under glass, and those are good things. And individuals, you know, tend to lock their garages more, and don't leave things in their cars. But by the way, car break-ins, those kind of burglaries are down more than 70%.
And do you think that the drones have a little something to do with that? Because I noticed, I've seen a lot of videos where the drone is following the burglar, the car burglar.
Absolutely, that's a second factor. The real-time center that tracks our drones and coordinates them, and also looks at surveillance video, is really been enforced this year, and it's making a significant impact. You know, we had 2 murders in the on the west side in July and August. The parent who was killed, who was stabbed to death crossing a crosswalk with his 8-year-old kid at Commodore Sloat Elementary School on Ocean Avenue, and they tracked that guy with video and drones, and eventually they arrested him 4 days later in Yosemite National Park.
Yeah, wow.
You know, the security cameras and the drones have made a significant difference. And I want to put in a plug here right now. The company that took over for San Francisco Safe has not. You know, they took over all Safe's cameras, and they're not being paid for those cameras right now. Some of those cameras are going to go down as more maintenance and more charges hook up. So the San Francisco Board of Supervisors and the city has to step up and take over those cameras.
Interesting.
You know, Chris Larson has paid for a lot of cameras.
Yes.
But these are some that are not happening, and somebody needs to take charge of that. I'll be writing about that in the next week for those who subscribe to our Stop Crime SF emails. The third thing is of course the DA. You know, the difference between Brooke Jenkins and Jason Boudin is night and day. They work closely with the police. They're charging crimes, and the DA filings are up 60% in 3 years. So that's making a difference too.
Yeah, they're. It's I'm actually working on a piece right now because I finally got the things that I tried to get from Boudin forever, and we had to threaten a lawsuit, and then he was never did provide, and then was tossed out. Was the statistics on diversion, which, as you may recall from my article back when he was in office, they didn't actually. The reason they were fighting me on it is they actually hadn't tracked any, and so I asked for them under Brooke, and it took them a few weeks, but they did compile them. And you'll be seeing some of that in my upcoming article. I cannot tell you that looks great. I gotta be honest. And we're seeing the results of that in most of the violent crime that we've had happen. The murders have mostly been people that were sent to diversion for mental health and doesn't have a great outcome. And now, of course, they want to send the guy that stabbed the nurse at General Hospital with diversion. They want to give him pretrial diversion for mental health. And now that the nurse has died, I'm assuming that may be off the table, but not necessarily, because when you see the list of violent felons that are being once again allowed to go to diversion, and if you just want to compare to that, so the filings that are the worst of the worst, which is, a very small percentage of crimes actually involve an arrest. But there are, in 23 through 25, there were 16.6 thousand filings, which is, pretty strong. And the DA filing rate was 57%. So of that amount, 16% were sent to mental health diversion. But not all of those were under Brooke. A lot of those were older cases under our friend Boudin. But, it's a large amount. There's over 1,000 cases in mental health diversion. When I checked that against Santa Clara County, the public defenders requested over 3,800 diversions for mental health and got 3. So that's a large difference, and tells you why you don't, for the most part, see crazy mentally ill drug addicts running around San Jose murdering people, which seems to be becoming more and more common in San Francisco. And I have said for a very long time now, that's our biggest issue.
Yeah, we all often concentrate on the DA and the police, whether they're doing their job. The judges are part of this. We do have some judges in San Francisco that seem to have consistent records on mental health diversion and less respect and concern for public safety when they. But one piece of the puzzle we're not looking at is the legislature. Some of the laws have to be changed. The Chronicle editorial staff, sorry, talking about your...
Well, no, I mean, let's just be honest. They finally had to get on the bandwagon because, we've been talking about this, and I have been talking about this way back with the Marina Times. This is sort of what happened with them with Boudin. They just, at a certain point, they couldn't avoid the truth anymore, and it's kind of pathetic, if you ask me.
Well, they looked at the case of Bill Jean Hobbs. This is a guy who's kissed, groped, grabbed, and in one case kidnapped women and girls all over San Francisco, and he's been in court time after time again. Part of that is not the judge's fault. Part of it is the legislature needs to change the law. There are some gaps in the legislature in legislation, and the judges really don't have a lot of choice in some cases. Now that doesn't let the judges off the hook, but some of the legislation on diversion could be, with a couple small tweaks, we could get a little bit better record from what you're talking about. Mental health diversion is a good thing, but when you're talking about repeat offenders or certain kinds of illnesses, it just is not going to work, and people fall through the cracks.
Well, that's an awful lot of people to fall through the cracks, though. Thousands are going, and I have to argue with you a bit on this, because why is it that Santa Clara County manages to reject all but 3? I mean, there's something going on, and I have to tell you that a big part of that is the DA, because when I was in mental health court, and I've gone to it a lot, I don't know if you have, but I've sat through it a lot. And when our editor's husband was bashed in the head by a repeat violent felon named Xavier Blue Wright, which you may recall I wrote a 2-part series on, and I sat through his entire case over the course of a year. And when I was in mental health court, I saw an ADA on Zoom who didn't fight really much at all. Pretty much everybody that was proposed for diversion, they said, yeah, okay, we'll try diversion. Maybe 2, she said, well, what he did was kind of violent, so we probably want to not let him in diversion. I mean, it really just, I feel like I know everybody wants to like Brooke and say she's better than Boudin. When you see my diversion statistics, you may think otherwise. She's letting, and don't get it twisted that only the judges have a say here, because in Santa Clara County, the DA fights vigorously to try juveniles as adults. They don't let people off the hook if they've committed a murder. They shouldn't be eligible for diversion by state law, and yet there are people with murders going into diversion under Brooke. That's all I can tell you. So, she can say all she wants that she's fighting for that not to happen. But in Santa Clara County, where they have a much more seasoned DA, only 3 people were accepted into mental health diversion in the same time period, and thousands are going in San Francisco. That's a problem. And, I was very hard on Boudin. I'm going to be hard on Brooke. That's my job, right? I can't say, well, Brooke is a better DA, so it's okay that 22 murderers are going through diversion. It's not okay. And we were seeing the results of that because Wyatt, the guy that killed the woman in her house in the Ingleside, had been sent to diversion. And now we see and that was under Brooke. And so now we see the results of that. So there's just to me, there's a hard argument back that the judges are a problem and the legislature is a problem. But you also have to look, like in the case of this Hobbs guy, this happened when he was in a Atascadero, so it was in Santa Barbara. That judge was an idiot. You could see what he said. It was ridiculous. And listening to the defense witness who said, he doesn't really qualify for physical harm. Well, as someone who actually was groped once by someone who worked at Sears and ended up having to go to court over it in my 20s, I can tell you it is physically harming and mentally harming. And I didn't leave my house for probably a month after it happened. It's very, very jarring. So, yes, in that case, I do blame the judge for that. But the fact that he ever was allowed into diversion in the first place, and, there's a whole bunch of things that are coming that are, the confluence of a whole bunch of issues. But when I'm looking at the state statistics for what cities and counties are giving diversion and getting it, San Francisco is way, way towards the top with violent repeat offenders.
Thank you. I think you raised a lot of good points. And I absolutely agree with you in terms of folks who are doing sexual harassment on the street and such. And our diversion statistics are scary. Can't argue with that. So one thing is that to some extent, the DA, of course, is shaped by the judges. So the judges deny their request time after time.
But I'm telling you that I sat in mental health court for this case of Xavier Blue Wright for a year, and upon which I overheard an average of 22 to 25 cases of mental health diversion a day. And I would say 98% of them, the DA didn't argue.
Good point. Okay.
And so, there has to be some change there. There has to be some attention paid to why 22 people accused of murder are in diversion right now.
I think the real question here is, can everybody hear me, by the way? I'm fine.
Yay, yes.
I think I'm back.
You're back.
Why are people who kill or maim being let into diversion in the first place?
Yep, that's the question.
Isn't there...
Sorry, Mike, I couldn't hear that.
Why do people accused of killing or maiming being allowed in diversion in the first place?
That's something that the legislature could resolve simply by taking that away. Right now, for example, we see drug diversion, and they should not be sending dealers who typically are not addicts, who are not using their own stuff. Exactly. They should not be sending them to diversion.
Well, they are. So 183 of the accepted diversion cases, 183 of the accepted diversion cases involved a charge of possession for sale.
That's just crazy.
That's mental health diversion, by the way, not, drug, that's mental health.
Right, so they're potentially taking up beds that could be used for actual real drug treatment of real addicts.
Well, they never go to a bed, though. That's the deal. What people don't understand is they don't go to a bed.
They're introducing the drug dealers to their potential clients.
Well, yeah, they sit in the same courtroom for sure.
And not the same courtroom, the same classes, too.
Yeah.
Classes. It's crazy.
Most of them never go to class. That's one thing. After studying diversion for the past 5 years, I can tell you 90% of them are no-shows. They just go back and do whatever they were doing. And the other issue is that there's no excuse in my book where a dealer or even a person who had possession for sale, who, whether they were a mule or whatever, belongs in mental health diversion. Nope. Sorry. Don't buy
it. Absolutely. It makes no sense. And in most other counties, they if you've been diverted once, they're not going to divert you a second time.
Right.
Not in San Francisco. Not in San Francisco.
Yeah, so of 22 of accepted diversion cases, had a filed charge of attempted murder. And if you complete the course, quote unquote, if which is that the rule is that you not commit another crime. And as you can see, that happened in the case down in San Jose with the juvenile who went to a juvenile probation diversion, and his only requirement was that he not commit another crime, which of course he did. Now the DA has asked for him to go to adult court. He's done, and I don't see enough of that tough behavior happening in San Francisco. Maybe it's because Santa Clara County with the Silicon Valley here and everything, it's not as woke. But when I'm in Silicon Valley versus when I'm in San Francisco, which I split my time pretty much down the middle, I could tell you that you don't see what you see in San Francisco. And so you do have to start looking at some of these programs like pretrial diversion, where in San Francisco, they have an entire, organization devoted just to that. And we saw that yesterday when this guy that stabbed the nurse, immediately the submitter was pretrial diversion. They want him to go to mental health diversion. And that's a big problem for me. I think that pretrial diversion, which by the way was one of the groups that the controller mentioned having some serious, issues with possible fraud and financial issues.
They too on the monitoring report.
Huh?
The last monitoring report that came out put them in tier 2, which means that they have some significant compliance problems.
Yeah. So you know what I say? Chop that entire department off. Get rid of it.
Can I say something about the nonprofit monitoring real quick? That presentation on Thursday, I sat through.
Yes.
It was very concerning. The tiers don't mean much. Because there's still a long leash for those nonprofits on those tiers. There's no objective outcomes or timelines that they have to abide by. There was like 3 bullet points that, as Susan says, often word salad on how these nonprofits on tier 2 and tier 3 are being watched over.
Well, are they even really watching them? I mean, so like for pretrial diversion, Griff, do you know what their issues with them are? Because I don't think the report makes it very clear.
I can't speak to pretrial diversion and nonprofit monitoring, those two tied together. I just can speak about what I learned in the nonprofit monitoring hearing at the Public Safety and Neighborhood Services Committee meeting that took place on Thursday, which was actually led by Supervisor Souter.
And what did you learn from that? What was concerning?
Well, they went over 2 programs, fiscal monitoring program and a contract monitoring program. And in both presentations, there was no objective outcomes or performance metrics tied to the monitoring programs. That was my number one concern. Supervisor Souter and Cheryl, who are both on that committee, actually started to dig in on the presenter, who was from the controller's office. I'll start by saying I don't think she was the one equipped to be presenting this information. She was just there to do her job. So part of me felt bad for her because she had no answers for Cheryl or Souter in the questioning.
She wasn't equipped with answering the right questions, which is why when I was not there, but I ended up watching the playback of the meeting, and in fact, I have a full transcript of the hearing done and ready, and I am supposed to be doing an article on that. But I wanted to get some questions answered out of certain supervisors, which means it's probably not going to show up until the middle of the week. But
I would love to know what, pretrial diversion did to get itself a level 2, but the report doesn't make it very clear.
exactly, that's the whole thing. So when I realized I had to call and follow up with that many people, I realized that this article is going to take longer than I originally thought.
That's another problem I have. Why should that be the case? I mean, once that controller's report comes out, it should be complete. They're just giving these half-assed, these are in the tier 1, these are in the tier 2. We need details, because maybe some of these groups should just be barred from doing business with the city at a certain point.
Yeah. I think
so. Why aren't they being? Why is it that pretrial diversion, which is now a level 2 of concern, is able to basically, immediately submit a request for the guy who, the stabber in the and he wasn't just a stabber, he was literally there to kill a doctor and ended up stabbing a nurse instead. So if he gets, mental health diversion, and let me tell you, I can tell you what happened with Xavier Blue Wright. They gave him, after a year, they gave him mental health diversion, and he was put at Baker Places and given 150 feet stay away from Ken. Within a week of getting out, he was right back in the marina within 150 feet of Ken. So if you think that guy is not going to show up looking for that doctor again, I got news for you. How is this guy qualified for mental health diversion in any other county?
Well, Baker Places in and of itself was as I'm sure you remember, was a huge compliance problem in and of itself.
Yes.
Because they were supposed to put together a behavioral health facility for District 8 and failed to do it, and tried to blackmail the Board of Supervisors into giving them more money, saying, we don't have the money to do it. We won't do it unless you give us more money. And then where did the money go? And we eventually found out it went on parties and the like. And they also hired a DPH employee to essentially double dip and be sort of an overnight compliance officer, which meant that she was spending most of her time with her double dipping salary sleeping. I mean, anyway, yes. we're going off the reservation here, but this is the situation you have to deal with when these services are being administered by nonprofits that are not accountable.
Yeah. And they're mostly unaccountable. And but again, as far as crime being down, there's a couple of things that San Francisco, when Daniel Lurie says crime is down, he's not taking into account diversion, which is a huge population of people. So if 22 attempted murderers are sent through diversion and their records wiped clean, that's 22 violent criminals that are not counted in the police database. And by the way, I don't really trust the SFPD database. I've had data experts of mine run the numbers and often find mistakes, and they leave things out. For a technologically savvy city, San Francisco doesn't do a very good job of keeping these databases. But I can tell you for a fact that the number of people with violent crime and felony felons that are going through diversion, that takes 1,000 plus people right out of the San Francisco crime database, because once they go through it, like Wyatt, they're wiped clean. They don't have a record. Like Xavier Blue Wright had a kidnapping, same like Hobbs. He had kidnapped 2 young girls, held them in a doorway in the marina, wouldn't let them go. Little girls, like 14, 13. He had bashed other people in the head. He had done a hot prowl walking into a woman's house where she came out of the bedroom and found him standing there. He had trespassed. He had stalked. He had, he had narcotics violations. He had beaten up people, all of these things. And then Ken, who, because he was over 75, he also had that, abuse of an elder. Well, now he's in diversion, and none of that counts toward his criminal history. So all of those crimes are not showing up in the San Francisco police database.
Good point. I will note that the system was probably the same, if not worse, 3 years ago. So
And I'm not saying Boudin was great at all. I'm just simply saying that it's not enough to say Brooke is better than Boudin. There's, there should not be cases like this guy Wyatt. This should never have happened. And frankly, the next thing Xavier Blue Wright does is probably going to be kill someone, because he came close to killing Ken. I mean, Ken has plates in his head. He'll never ever get over this. Multiple surgeries. He's afraid now to even walk out of his house in the marina, because he was just walking his dog in the middle of a Saturday morning. This changes people's lives, and I don't understand why these violent felons are getting diversion. I just don't. And if you talk to, like in my second part of that article, I ask, Raphael Mendelman about it, and he says, well, because we don't have anywhere to put them. Well, that's not an excuse for me. Then put them in prison. Again, as someone who has, friends one of my friends has bipolar disorder. She takes meds, but she's one of the top software engineers in the world. She helped to create Java script. So I think it's also a disservice to our mentally ill population who have actual mental illness. Less than 3% of mentally ill people commit violent crimes. So to constantly be saying, well, he tried to carjack someone with a gun because he was mentally ill and he goes into diversion, and yes, that's an actual case, there's a problem with that.
Absolutely.
I mean, again, because I'm working on this story and I'm looking at who's going into diversion, and I'm frankly shocked. I mean, I'm shocked.
Right.
And, just bottom line, violent criminals should not go to diversion, period.
I think the other major issue here is, diminished capacity defenses have been controversial for decades. Dan White got off essentially on a diminished capacity defense. It was nowhere near as, obviously that kind of diminished capacity defense where someone who is largely not mentally ill, but supposedly made temporarily not competent due to things like junk food, things like that. That kind of defense doesn't wash anymore. But the reality here is, I think the social costs and how broad of a blanket diminished capacity defenses are being applied here, there's still this huge issue. The other issue, I think, and I don't know if anyone here can really address it, is the incidents that continue to happen that aren't reported.
Right.
And there's, if I have to go by my experience, just walking down the street in the Civic Center area, over a span of 30 years in the city, there must be a tremendous amount of incidents that simply just are not reported, either because they happen to individuals that are afraid that they'll be retaliated against or acted against by the state in some way because of their status, or other people who figure it's too much trouble to make a report.
Because nothing happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And to jump in here, another one is violent crimes and even deaths are not, they're not called crimes sometimes, so you have a situation like somebody does overdose on fentanyl. It is sold to that person by a dealer. There's a big debate going on. Is that what kind of crime is that? Because it's not being plugged in as a homicide. What exactly is it? It's not going into the numbers. And if you do look at those numbers, our violent crime and homicide numbers would be completely out of whack if you started inputting that data into it. And that's pretty major. So I'm constantly shocked that that's not.
You're absolutely correct, because the 10 crimes that are on the SFPD crime database, the crimes that are tracked by the FBI are not, drug crimes are not included in there, because you don't have a victim saying, hey, he sold me drugs.
Precisely.
So They're not included there. Now we have had seen some changes in October. I think we were down half the amount of overdoses that we had in January. So that's some indirect evidence, but it's not been consistent. It's not been 3 years like some of the other crimes. So yeah.
Well, yeah, we know. We know from our first. In the first series that we did in The Voice, and we have a second one coming up about overdoses outside. But our first in a series called, Housing First, Morgue Second, there's been over 4,000 overdose deaths in San Francisco since 2020.
That's right.
And, that's just, and it's just going up. And, I find it sort of absurd and disturbing when Daniel Lurie touts overdoses being down by like 10. It's like, okay, so 10 fewer people, but that's still 50 something people. It's still 2 a day, any way you look at it. That hasn't changed. And that's because there's absolutely no, again, I can tell you in Silicon Valley, you don't sell drugs in public, you get arrested. You don't do drugs in public, you get arrested. They check your warrants. If you have a warrant for something else, they keep you in jail. If it's from another county, they ship you out. It's just, they don't allow this sort of thing to happen. And San Francisco has let this happen to a point where it's gone on so long that getting a grip on it is going to take a decade or more, maybe 2 decades, because it's been accepted. And, once you let the cat out of the bag, as the old saying goes, that cat becomes a tiger. And that's the problem, is that, other counties have kept it at a dull roar by just simply not allowing it in the first place. And it's not to say it doesn't happen. You just don't see it, and it's not visible. Sure, there are overdoses in all of these other counties, Marin, everywhere else, but it's not at the level of San Francisco. And that isn't because San Francisco is a big city. It's not a big city. It's far smaller than San Jose. It's just because it's been tolerated and still is being tolerated. I mean, when you see the overdose outdoor story, and by the way, thank you to, Gina McD from Mothers Against Drug Addiction and Death, because she has worked tirelessly over the past 5 years to get these statistics that we're now, releasing in our story, and our secret data person who helps us and has been helping me since way back in the Boudin days, who, wants to say anonymous, but frankly is an amazing, he's one of the people I run things like the SF database through, SFPD dashboard through. When you see where these people are dying outside, you're, almost 30% die indoors, right, of Pacific in permanent supportive housing. But when you look at where the outdoors deaths are happening, you're going to also see a pattern. And you're going to see that it happens, guess where? In front of permanent supportive housing.
Yeah.
And then to add to that, which is just how accurate are those numbers? I can say I love total.
Oh, Erica, are you there? Erica? Oh, we lost Erica.
Don't tell me she caught my disease.
A couple other people in the comments have said they lost audio too.
Accurate. Now.
Oh, there she is.
The other issue is overdoses. I did talk to good old JJ Smith. I don't know if he's on the call today, actually. And I asked him directly. I said, "Do you believe that all these overdoses are being accurately submitted as overdoses?" He said, "Nope." Now, I tend to believe people who are on the street and who see it day after day after day. So I am a skeptic about those numbers. I would love it if we are seeing fewer overdoses. But when I hear people who are out there observing, who are in the know, who say nope, quite the opposite. I think that deserves some credence.
Frank, can you actually, speaking of that, can you tell us what the 10 crimes that are being tracked by the FBI are that San Francisco adheres to?
Oh, okay. So there are 5 violent crimes and 5 nonviolent crimes, and I'm doing this from memory, so I'm not going to get all 10. But
yeah, that's okay.
Murder, rape, arson, assault. Those are 4 out of the 5 violent crimes. Trafficking, I can't remember. There are 2 kinds of trafficking. I'm not sure.
Human and drugs.
Yeah. Yes, and I'm not sure whether those are classified as violent or not. The property crimes are larcenies,
car burglaries.
Car burglaries are included in larcenies. Auto burglaries, so if they take the car and drive it off, that's one. And I'm blanking on the other.
Maybe
rape is one.
And probably, and I would think attempted murder, right? Wouldn't that be there?
Attempted murder is not.
It isn't. Oh.
All homicides, if I'm correct, are separate, and I don't think attempted murder is included.
So would that fall under assault with a great bodily injury then? That's kind of odd.
I'm not going to be able to tell you that. Hold on 1 second. Okay, now I'm going to give you this here. So we've got the property crimes are larceny, theft, motor vehicle theft, burglaries, and let's see whether they consider that. And arson. Those are the 4 that are the property crimes, and the violent crimes are homicide, rape, robbery, assault, and the 2 kinds of human trafficking: sexual and involuntary servitude. So there you have it. There's 6 violent and 4 property crimes that are tracked. And again, there's a big caveat. Homicides reflect the number of victims are not based on the incidents, and the homicides are going to go up and down, whereas the others generally do not. And they go up and down because somebody dies, and all of a sudden, it's not that's not an attempted homicide or an assault. It's a homicide, or they'll plead to a different charge, and so that will change too.
Yeah. So pleading has a lot to do with it. And I would argue in San Francisco, again, diversion has a lot to do with it. When 22 attempted murderers are sent through diversion, that affects, because they could have otherwise been charged with, say, attempted murder, or they could have been charged even, with a lesser charge, which often happens, but still is a charge, like assault with a deadly weapon with intent to cause a great bodily injury.
Yeah, and I would argue that something else that you mentioned, the fact that sometimes their records are wiped clean on certain offenses is an even more serious problem, because then they're repeat offenders, but the court oftentimes does not treat them that way.
Interesting.
And the laws are set up to treat repeat offenders differently in terms of diversion too.
Yeah, that's another issue that I'm addressing in this article, is that, there are repeat offenders being sent through diversion on a fairly frequent basis. And
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And that's and again, there's a guy who's in diversion right now who has a charge of carjacking with a gun. Again, mental health diversion. Do you want to be in your car when that guy is standing next to you? I don't think so. So there are some issues with diversion, and that, frankly, when I asked the mayor's office for his, what he was using to justify the big numbers that his PR team has him touting all the time, 30% and 40% Union Square, they were just using the SF police database. And as Mike has pointed out, they're using the entire area around the financial district. That's not Union Square alone. That's, a much bigger area. There's nothing they've done that drills down exactly what's happening in those places. But I mean, Erica and I were in Union Square a couple of months ago, and we're just walking down the street, and all of a sudden all these police cars come and they pull this guy over and they drag him out of the car. And, I mean, we don't know what happened with that, but that was definitely a crime of some kind. And, probably, again, either went to diversion or was dropped, so I just go by what people's eyes and ears are seeing and what I'm hearing when people contact me and say, I just saw this happen, I just saw that happen. I mean, even with animals, I say, please call please call 911 if it's a severe case of abuse, and if it's, and call the, emergency line for animal care and control. I mean, I appreciate that people think I'm the animal journalist. That's great, but I can't make the people go out to the crime unless you call them when it's happening. And I think that's happening with human crimes as well. I think people, like, I didn't call that in, Erica didn't call that in, and it just was happening. And so we don't know how many cases are slipping through the cracks. And I don't completely trust the San Francisco Police Department dashboard. It's antiquated and needs to be updated. And just like outlining a map and saying this is how many crimes are now happening, it's 40% down, is not good enough for me.
Yeah, and of the shoplifting crimes that can be violent. You see people threatening other, security guards, customers, employees. They raise their fists, they charge at them. These are violent experiences. They do not get reported. So these numbers are very vague to me.
Yeah.
So a couple of points, and I'm going to push back here a little bit. Not that I don't agree with your main assertion. The question is, do you think that the numbers were perfect 3 years ago?
No.
And now?
No, of course not.
No, not at all. But that's why it's really hard to track. So it's really hard to say, wow, we're doing a lot better now. Well, I mean, we may be in certain areas. And again, that's where I start to depend on my eyes and ears and sources. Great. I can feel that. But when you start looking at the numbers, I want to be able to hang on to those, but they're not always so clear cut, and so I'm just having a hard time with that, and I think you are too, Susan.
No, those are good points. The other thing that I'd point out is that San Francisco does, I think, every year a public opinion survey of residents, and one of the questions they asked is, have you been the victim of a crime in the last year? And we are seeing some changes there. It's not as dramatic as the 48% number, though there is, to some extent, people are thinking back what happened in the last year, but you're seeing a very different perception in what people think about crime.
For sure.
You've also probably seen GROSF's study about crime too, and they show something similar, though it's not exactly the same question.
And honestly, ask a cab driver, aka Uber driver, what they see. They get the details. They get it from the people who are riding with them. They see certain crimes definitely going down. I live not too far from Lombard Street, which used to be this major hotspot for everything from pickpocketing to strong arm robbery to car break-ins to even, what is it called when you steal somebody's car when they're in it, to these, those types of things.
Stolen vehicle.
Yeah, and they struck the one with somebody in it, get out, that kind of thing. But yeah, those have definitely gone down. So I think there's a certain amount of celebration that we can partake in.
Well, so
not time to stop. Yes.
Well, some of the reason, Erica, why the crime on Lombard went down is because during the pandemic, all of those hotels were being used as a Gavin Newsom drop-off point for people being released from prison to take,
This is where all perspective, they came from the East Bay. These were almost exclusively people who drove in, came over the bridge, parked themselves there, and then did what they needed to do. And why that has changed a bit. Not exactly sure, but it has.
Well, but I can definitely tell you, having run the Marina Times for many years, that the hotels are on Lombard have always been a drop off point for. Remember, I stayed at the Bridge Motel just after the pandemic to see what it was like. It was horrific, but I can definitely tell you that the crime on Lombard Street has always had, and the people in the marina that are troubled. Have been, people that are, released from drug programs and jail, and you've got to put a big chunk of blame on Gavin Newsom. And I'm working on something right now that is going to kind of blow him up a bit, because not just during the pandemic, but after the pandemic, there were rules that were put out there to not go after parolees once they'd been released. So no matter what they did. So they had basically carte blanche to do whatever they wanted, and nothing, even if they got arrested, they were ordered to be released. It's a pretty scary story. I think, why has that gone down? I think you're right. It's gone down in part because there's more, maybe a little more policing. It's hard to say, but I know that people that you see in the marina, many of them are living in those hotels, and the sooner they get rid of those hotels, the better. Ask anybody in the marina. They've been telling me that for 20 years. Like, when are we going to get rid of those horrible hotels?
Lombard Street has always been the abattoir of the marina in Calhoun.
Yeah.
It's
yes.
It's the drug and prostitution market of that neighborhood.
Yes. Yeah.
I just had dinner there last night, right on Lombard, and
oh, I did. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but the thing it's not like the active activities on the street. They would advertise on Craigslist or other sources, and you'd go to the hotel rooms.
Yes. But still, the when I was there were problems. A woman was screaming out in the street, clearly high off her rocker. Police came. I mean, it was still scary. And this was 2021. But I can't, if I told you how many emails I've gotten over the years from people in the marina so angry about those hotels. But certainly the pandemic was, let's be honest, right? The pandemic was a bad time for crime.
Yes, and that's another key factor, along with the DA, the drones, the cameras, people being more cognizant of crime. As the pandemic has lessened and gone away, we're seeing crime rates across the country go down in certain categories. So it's not just what San Francisco is doing or not doing. The situation's changed. The pandemic was a terrible time, as you point out.
I think
I'd also like to
go ahead.
I want to point out one other statistic we're talking about. The crime dashboard, and of course, drugs are not on the crime dashboard. We're seeing overdoses go up and down depending on the month. October was a particularly good month, and you talked about statistics. But I want to point out, the open air drug markets during the day have been significantly reduced in the Tenderloin area. To some extent, they've moved to the Mission and to other neighborhoods, but there's no doubt, if you talk to people on the ground, that's gone away to a large extent. But at night, it's not gone away. It's still there in the Tenderloin.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason is, one, we're still short 500 to 600 police officers, and the cameras and drones are not quite as effective during the evening hours, particularly when the fog and overcast rolls in. But we're just not doing that good a job at closing down the nighttime open air drug markets. That's something that we need to concentrate on.
There's another dichotomy, though, here, in that San Francisco is still handing out drug smoking supplies, which, in my opinion, and JJ's, there is zero reason for. That does not prevent AIDS. The AIDS Foundation did great work back in the day. It saved many of my friends' lives, but there is no excuse on earth that Daniel Lurie should continue to allow, and the Board of Supervisors should continue to allow, drug smoking supplies. no excuse, because you can die of a fentanyl overdose smoking just as much as you can intravenously. And I don't even believe they should be handing out intravenous drug supplies unless they return, a needle with it. I mean, it's disgusting out there. I mean, almost every time I return, I step out of the car, depending on the neighborhood, and, there's needles on the ground. You don't see that, again, you don't see that anywhere else in any civilized city in the Bay Area. So there's other issues. I just, you can't say we want to fight the open air drug markets, but you're handing out smoking supplies in back alleys. And as JJ's videos prove, Daniel Lurie can scream all he wants that, it's coming with services. It's not. They don't care.
It's not coming with services. The people who are running the show are the activists, and why they have been allowed to continue this practice. They have the power. They call the shots. Why this is, I'm not exactly sure, because Daniel Lurie should have control of the Department of Public Health, who has the strings to this. So it's bizarre, and it needs to stop. It needs to stop yesterday.
Hillary Ronan needs to be fired.
You've got a couple of political. Go ahead, Susan.
I just said Hillary Coonan needs to be fired. That's one thing.
Yeah, and the question is, how do you get people like Hillary Coonan's fired? Because the problem that you have here is a combination of sort of professional chumminess and the fact that these people are, by creating these policies, they're also building up stuff on their resume. So it's also a product of careerism. And at the worker end, at the worker bee end, you've got the civil service unions that also end up defending these policies.
Well, yeah, they defended the policy to get rid of the sheriffs at General Hospital, and look how that worked out, right? One of their own is now dead. But so Griff was saying he's got to scoot in 15 minutes. So let's see what else does Griff have to say about what he's observed lately? And he's been covering some of these meetings for us and hearings for us on these issues.
Excellent. Yeah. Just a quick recap. Last Monday, December 1st, Matt Dorsey, Supervisor Dorsey, held a town hall and brought in interim Chief Paul Yep, Sheriff Miyamoto, and Mayor Lurie. I think the biggest bright spot out of that meeting was the proactiveness we're seeing with Kunal Modi. And I think that's the one person I have any faith in within City Hall today. But there was a handful of questions that addressed various different topics. The hot topic of the evening was probably, I'd say, the new sobering center that's going to open up early next year at 444 6th Street. They do not have a contractor yet. Kunal did hint that it would be a contractor from outside San Francisco, so not one of the current sort of grifters we see. They are going there was a question based off of performance metrics, and it was very clear what Kunal laid out, at least I thought. And they're using they categorize this sobering center as an intervention between jail and the emergency room. Miyamoto called out multiple times that the jails are at capacity right now. And that, taking a police officer, taking someone on drugs just takes up too much time. The three performance metrics is officer turnaround time. Kunal cited, we want officers back on the beat within 15 minutes of dropping that person suffering from drugs at the that they take to the center. 2 is the number of public drug arrests. And then 3 is tracking the amount of the conversion rate from, people that get dropped off to various service, whether it's treatment, etc.
So, Griff, once again, this is their choice, though, right? So, if they're in a recliner and there's how many, 15 or 20 seats for them?
I do not know the number of bed or they're chairs. They're calling them, not beds,
they're
but chairs.
I think they're recliners. And so they give them a cup of hot cocoa and they say, "We want you to go to treatment," but that person still has the right to say no. What do they do with them then? Let them go?
Yeah, it's a 24-hour sobering center. They can't. I'm almost positive if there's no action to additional service or treatment beyond the 24 hours hold there, that they can be let go.
So they're cited. Right? They get cited, not arrested.
Correct. They're not using the word arrests in this case because it's not jail.
So I was assured by the sheriff also that people could stay longer if they wanted to. So it wasn't just that 24-hour hold. They can continue to be in the chair. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Yeah,
but where are they going to go if they only have 20 chairs?
25, I believe. I think that's what we were told is 25, but
yeah, that's right.
It's very few. We have thousands and thousands of people who are doing drugs in public. So it's a drop of a bucket.
Miyamoto did cite that he went to 2 similar sites out of the city that they're replicating this model based off of. I think one he said was in Santa Cruz and the other was in Arizona. So they're following a model here that they think will be effective. The one big concerning piece of, I think we all knew this, but although Supervisor Dorsey is a huge proponent of recovery first and, abstinence-based recovery, he still touted that harm reduction is part of the continuum of care. And we see this in contracts that got rubber stamped as recently as last Wednesday at the Budget and Finance Committee. Episcopal Community Services had a contract amendment for 2 years at their site on the 200 block of 8th Street for $15 million. And in that contract service requirement states training based on the harm reduction model.
And just a little reminder that if you go back to our first article on Housing First, Morgue Second, Episcopal Community Services has the highest number of overdose deaths of any nonprofit working with city contracts. So why are they getting rubber stamped?
Correct. Yeah, it seems to be too easy for them to get their contracts approved. But I guess getting back on track in regards to Monday night, there was an interesting question from the executive director at SOMA West CBD, Alex Ludlum. Most of the questions were like higher level, not addressing like specific like instances or scenarios, but he did cite 2 different scenarios that they recently called in, or their private security recently called in, meaning SOMA West CBD's private security, where there was some sort of offense by a suspect drug user, and then the police let them back off, which I thought was interesting. He actually, he was the one that stated that he believes that the morale along and the culture amongst the rank and file needs to change. That was probably one of the more controversial comments.
Who said that?
Q&A. Alex Ludlum, of executive director of SOMA West CBD. And Lurie and Yep both addressed that concern, and they were a bit defensive in the sense that they feel that the culture has changed. But I thought that was an interesting little
I just saw a video
there.
of J.J. Smith where 2 police officers go up to people using drugs in public and they tell them, hey, you can't use drugs here. And they just kind of look at them like, yeah, whatever. And then they just say, okay, well, I'm going to give you a citation and have a good day. That's it. Oh, before he goes, I just want to really quickly have Stanley Roberts on real briefly, because talk about people behaving badly. I did want to acknowledge that Stanley is coming back to Cron. Stanley was one of my journalism idols. I used to record people behaving badly, so when I got home from my temp job, I could watch him. And I think it's a huge thing for the San Francisco Bay Area that he's going to come back and be catching more people behaving badly. And so, Stanley, are you there?
Let me invite him to speak.
There we go. Are you there, Stanley? Yay.
Hello.
Hey, Stanley Roberts.
So just for the record, I've actually been back since the 10th of December. No, 10th of December?
November.
Yes.
No, December.
10th of November, yes.
Yes.
10th of November, just before Thanksgiving. So I actually have 3 segments that are on Quan 4 Plus streaming app. Now, I understand a lot of people who follow me some people don't even know what streaming is, believe it or not. And so they don't know how to get there. But so on Thursday, starting at 5 a.m., I will be back on TV. So let's have fun with it. And let's get out here and let's bring civility back to the Bay Area. Sorry I left.
Excellent.
But,
yeah. And so if people find people behaving badly or have an idea for you, how do they reach out to let you know?
So I believe the email address is peoplebehavingbadly@cron4.com. But I was also given a note that said it was pbb@cron4.com. I'm going to double check on Monday to make sure that it works, because I'm still trying to figure out the new nicks and crannies of being on the air. But it is, being back to the station. But it is interesting, and I'm glad to be back, and I miss a lot of the Bay Area people. Although I've been back here, and you know this, since 2022, some people still think I'm in Arizona.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I can scream all day long that I'm back in the Bay Area, and they're like, yeah, but you live in Arizona, right? I'm like, you know what? Okay, whatever. You do you, and I'll just keep moving the other direction.
So can you give us any hints on what you're working on, or what kind of people behaving badly you're looking for?
So there are actually 3 already published on streaming, and I'm looking at everything. So I can't give you any hints. I'd like it to be a surprise, but you can be sure that it's going to be stuff that bugs people, because a lot of the stuff, the irony of it is that I've done 3 segments without telling anyone what they were, and then they come and go, I wish you would do a segment on this, this, and this. And I go, oh, yeah, I already did that. It's coming up. So I already know the pulse of the Bay Area. I had a chance to watch everything going on. And it's okay. I'll put it to you this way. When I left the house in order. When I come back, it's messy now. So somebody wasn't doing their work. So
So the 3 that are up right now, where can people find them?
They can go to so if you have a Roku box, Samsung box, Apple TV box, or a Fire Stick, you go there and you put in Cron 4 Plus.
Yeah, the Cron
and then it's
Smart TV app.
Yeah, Smart TV app. Thank you. And what we'll do then at that point, it's on streaming, so you can pick which one you want to watch, or watch all 3. But it allows you to do it. It's not like you have to wait for it to come up. You can actually watch it on demand.
And can you give us a hint of what those 3 are about?
Oh, absolutely. So one of them is about there was an illegal left turn for people who were trying to find a shortcut to get onto the Bay Bridge, Sterling Street on-ramp. And unfortunately, there happened to be a cop there, which I didn't link up with him. I mean, it wasn't planned. He and I met there at the same time. And next, he's writing tickets, and I'm like, oh, because what I do is I literally ride around the city looking for things that are out of place and come back and figure out if I'm going to do it later. The other one is, let me go backwards. So I even talked to a Uber passenger who got stuck in one of the cars that got a ticket for making that illegal left turn in front of the cop. So that whole statement about how cops, if there's a cop everywhere and about commit a crime, yeah, people don't pay attention. And that's a good example. I have to think now, because now you got my brain going. What are the other 2? You know what? Just go onto the streaming platform and you tell me what you think. And you can follow me on my X account here, and tell me what you think. I'd love to hear your feedback. But Thursday, we go back on TV.
Starting at what time?
According to my news director, he said it starts at 5 a.m. So it'll be at some point, if you turn on Cron 4, you'll see it.
So glad to have you back. That, you are definitely the GOAT of man on the street video journalism. You've inspired an entire generation. And, one of the things I love about you is you've been so giving of your time to people like JJ and, helping them, for example, to get JJ a watermark because people kept stealing his videos and showing people how to, be better at using YouTube. And really you are, the OG. Never been a more humble, nicer person. I'm proud after years of worshiping you from afar and being so nervous the first time you called me, to now being able to call you and your lovely wife, Diane, two of my closest friends. I could not be prouder of you. And, there's going to be some people behaving badly that better watch out.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As it relates to JJ, so the very first time him and I met, I did an interview with him. He had never done an interview before. And I think it's probably on my YouTube channel where we first talked. And after we talked, I told him, I said, hey, look, I interviewed you. And then after this gets out, there's going to be a lot of people that want to interview you as well. But remember, everyone that interviews you is not always your friend. So, speak your mind, but be aware that just because you said something that made sense doesn't mean it will translate as making sense on when it's published. Because people pick and choose what they want. And sometimes the things they pick aren't the things that you wish they hadn't picked. But once you say it, it's out there.
And we have JJ here as well. Let him chime in too, because he's got his hand up here. Let's see. Add a speaker. There's JJ. Hey, JJ.
Hey, I'm here.
Hey, JJ, what's up?
No, I want to congratulate Stanley for being back on air. Stanley was my role model. And
I love it.
It was like when Stanley first reached out to me to interview me, I told him plenty of stations did ask me to do an interview with me. I denied everybody. And the only reason why I told Stanley, let Stanley interview me is because we knew each other already, but he didn't know I was the person behind JJ Smith. So I gave him that opportunity to be the first one to interview me. But everybody else I had already turned down previously.
And look where you are now.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you got a watermark so people can't take your stuff. And, the fact that, again, Stanley has been so giving and allowing, helping the newer generation of videographers to find their platform. And you definitely have your own thing. And that is showing that crime is not down. That there's still terrible problems. And that has to be done, I know people get mad at me and say, well, can't you just give Mayor Lurie a break? Can't you give Brooke Jenkins a break? No, that's not my job. We're the fourth estate. When they do good, I say so. When they do bad, I say so. That's the way it has to be. And so, and a picture is 1,000, speaks 1,000 words. So your work is appreciated, both in yours and Stanley's.
Yeah.
Again, thank you again for giving me the time, but do me a favor real quick. I got a guy here who has been trying to talk, and I know his name looks weird, and we had a conversation about his name, and I can't control that, but Pensland, let's let him talk for a minute, because he said he has something to say. I would love to hear it just before I hang up.
Okay. Hold on. There you go.
Yeah, he's actually got, there you go.
Pensland? Are you there?
Hello, Susan?
Yes.
First of all, I want to sincerely apologize for the optics of my name and profile picture. I created this account in 2012 when I was very young and spiteful at the inappropriate filtering system. But I just want to say I've been listening for the last maybe hour or two. I jumped in here because I kind of retired from hosting spaces as of my last 24-hour stream yesterday. And so today I was just browsing around and I found something says VOSF. And I was like, the city I live in is abbreviated like that. So let's check it out. And wow, I truly feel like I found my home, because the stuff that you're saying, Susan, is a lot of the stuff that's been in my head trapped, because the peers around me here in the city, they don't align with what I feel in my heart and my opinions. And so when I came in here, I just wanted to keep on listening, but it just came to a point where I just had to request for the mic. And then I see Stanley Roberts in here. Stanley Roberts, I've been watching since like way before he made the move, way before he went to Arizona. And so I was really bummed out. One of the reasons why I actually stopped consuming YouTube stuff is because he was definitely one of the OGs of the YouTube space back then.
Yes.
And to have you guys following me and stuff like that, normally I don't geek out. Like, I don't geek out if Gary Cardone gets into my space. I don't geek out if what an honor. I just want to say what an honor. And if you guys, I don't want to take up any more of my time just goggling over you guys. But if there's anything you want to ask me about my experience here in the Park Merced, SF State, Stonestown region, feel free to ask, because you guys have touched on homicides. You guys have talked about what else? Diversions. You guys have talked about all kinds of issues. And if there's any questions you want to know from an SF local on the west side of the city, just feel free to ask.
I've had a lot of people reach out and mention that exact area. So reach out in my DMs and let's chat about what's going on at Park Merced, because I hear there's quite a lot going on there.
Yeah.
So really quickly before I get off of here, I got to say this. I sent him a DM and I said, dude, I saw that he followed me and I read his information. I said, I'm not going to follow this guy back. His name is showing up as Penis. And then, so I wrote him. I said, dude, I almost didn't follow you because your name was truncated to read Penis. And I'm like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to follow a guy named Penis, because that just so I tried to convince him to change his name to like add an extra N or something.
Yes.
So that way when it doesn't show up, it doesn't truncate as Penis.
Because I first logged on when I was first trying to log on and run this thing earlier this morning, and it's like the first request to speak is Penis Land, and I'm going, no, I don't think so. So sorry about that. It's just first impressions. What can I tell you?
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, Stanley, I know you got to go, but I just wanted to tell people that you're back. I can't wait to start recording and watching Kron again, because after you left, I stopped watching Kron. Love Pam Moore. She's retired now, but I always did love her. And I love Vicky Lebiakis, and there's a few great people on there, but for me, it was all about people behaving badly. And God knows we have plenty of them, and I would like to direct your attention to the Great Highway.
Oh, yeah, trust me, that is on my list of things to do, because that one really got me, too, because now they're shutting down 19th Avenue partially to do construction.
Yep.
So there are no other alternate routes except for through people's neighborhoods.
Yep.
Which is going to make it, again, I use the word messy.
Yes.
But as I hang up, Lynn, let me know when you're home. I'm going to bring that pork roast by and drop it off. I brought a pork roast from Costco, and it's like the size of a small city. And so there's no way I can eat it all. So
Lynn is our producer for The Voice. She's on here.
Yeah. So I love you guys. Hey, thank you. Hey, remember, follow me. And for some reason, I cannot get past 40.5 on followers on Twitter, except for if I post about shopping carts, and then I have more than 2 million views.
That was weird.
Which I never understood that one to save my life.
Yeah, so
anyway.
I just got to say, all I said there is you asked why people brought their carts into the food aisle at Costco. And I said, perhaps they're afraid of having their stuff stolen. And all of a sudden, 121,000 views on that? I don't get Twitter's algorithms. I really don't.
So I'll tell you quickly, if this will help people with their Twitter algorithm. So I looked at the numbers, and because 50% of the people are still watching the video towards the end, the algorithm says, oh, this is good video because 50% are still watching at the very end of the video, which means that it must be good enough to send to other people. So I didn't expect it to wake up in the morning with more than 2 million views of a video, but I also didn't expect to wake up and watch it. How a shopping cart post becomes racist is beyond me, but somehow or another it turned racist. Now you figure that one out.
Well, God, it's Twitter. And there's a lot of losers in their mother's basements as we speak. I mean, we know that.
Anyway, so thank you again.
Of course.
And everybody, appreciate taking time. And if you don't like what I do, that's fine. If you do like what I do, that's fine. But I'm going to do what I do because that's what I do.
And meantime, if you have suggestions for Stanley of people behaving badly, you can follow him on X and then reach out in a DM or make a comment and say, hey, Stanley, and use the hashtag PBB and say, I have some PBB, and he'll get in touch with you.
Thank you again.
Yes,
good night.
you're welcome.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
And I also have to run, so I want to say thanks for everyone who's listening.
And I would actually, and we love you, Erica, and and we appreciate all the work you've been doing as well. You and Griff have spent a lot of time down at City Hall, and love that Mike is watching the hearings while he's also editor-in-chief and doing so much. I've been really sick this last week, so I'm still kind of sick, but trying to get my act together, hopefully. But I've been sick. But and Liz Lee, I see, is listening, and she actually has a bunch of great stuff coming out. And one of them is something that's also not addressed in the SFPD dashboard, which is juvenile crime, which is a huge thing that is not ever counted, which Frank may or may not know more about, but that's not counted.
That's a huge problem.
Yeah, and it's not counted right in the dashboard.
Yeah. So I'm going to say goodbye, Frank.
All right, Erica.
So very, very much for being on. I have enjoyed watching you in real life, and really appreciate what you do. So have a great week coming up, Susan and Mike and everybody else.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we'll see you. I'll see you this week.
You definitely will. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And JJ, as long as you're here, just quickly, we're addressing Crime is Down. You're out there on the street. Can you tell us what you're seeing?
I'm seeing the same thing I've been seeing. There's still a lot of crime going on. It's just going unreported. And those crimes that's going unreported, they don't count those in the statistics reports.
And those guys that you had a video of some police that were giving citations to some drug users. Those don't go to anywhere, right? Those are not counted as arrests.
No, those are counted as arrests. Anytime SFPD stops a person and they cite them on anything it can't be a little misdemeanor charge or whatever, such as smoking drugs, those are considered arrests. Even though they didn't get booked into the station, they still consider that as an arrest. That's how they're cooking the books, saying we arrested this many people, we arrested this 120 people we arrested. No, y'all cited 120 people. Nobody got incarcerated.
Yeah, those two just, in fact, I think the police they were so bent over backwards trying to be nice to them. It was crazy.
Yes. So when Lori did that briefing about they arrested 70 people for the last 3 days for drug-related offenses, no, y'all cited 80% of those people that y'all arrested. You say arrested, but they was released right there on the spot.
So all 70 of them were cited and released.
That makes sense.
Cited and released.
That makes sense because Miyamoto said last week that the jails are full.
We're correct. So they're not arrested. And then if you have a warrant, a lot of people there picking up on warrants, right? So what they get them to the sheriff's department, which after SFPD pick a person up with warrants, they exchange custody with the sheriff's department. The sheriffs get them to the sheriff's station and they cite them out with another court date to appear.
Okay.
They don't incarcerate them.
And then they fail to appear.
Again.
And they fail to appear most of the time.
Yes. And it keeps going to a circle. 30 days later, after they didn't appear for that ticket or for whatever, they get rearrested again, and the process goes all over again. They get cited out again.
So that's why when people say they don't see a difference, that's why. There's still no fear.
If you look at the DA's website, she will periodically report on the people who are out on outstanding warrants, and it was around 5,000 last I checked.
And out of those 5,000 people, it's like 3,000 is out on warrants for things like they didn't go to court because they got caught with a crack pipe, or they didn't go to court because they was riding a bicycle on the sidewalk, or they was drinking in public. Those are a lot of those citation release warrants.
Wow. So, and you're still seeing, as far as overdoses being down, do you have any insight, JJ, as to why you think overdoses were down in October? I think they're back up for November.
Well, the drugs is weak.
They're weak. Now, why is that?
Because I guess they cut it more. You know, it's not 100. It ain't 100% like it used to be.
Wow.
They cut it more. They stretched it.
So why do you think that is?
To make more money.
Wow.
It also may be a result of better enforcement and interception of precursor at the border. And it may also be due to agreements that we made with China. I mean, one of the things that happened behind closed doors at APEC a couple of years ago, remember we had this big Asia Pacific conference a couple of years ago, was Biden and Xi met at this estate down the peninsula and talked about, among other things, you know, getting a handle on fentanyl precursors. So that may also be an example, the fact that they just don't have enough supply.
Well, I mean, but I believe
Of course, is that you can find, you know, other things. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing nitazines in the city in a greater footprint very soon. We've been due for it for years.
Been due for what?
Nitazines. It's a new type. It's a newer type of synthetic drug.
Oh boy.
It's already prevalent in Europe and on the East Coast.
Wow. Yeah, I think I've seen a few things about that. JJ, have you heard anything about that?
No, I haven't heard anything about that one.
Oh, great. Yeah, I've definitely heard there's some other stuff coming up out there. I mean, it's never going to be, you know. I mean, I hope it slows down, but.
I think Griffin's helping out now. He has to head out. But thanks, Griffin, for being on board.
I would note that the CDC said overdose deaths were down 24% nationwide in September. So there is something to what Mike is pointing out. That it's not just in San Francisco.
Because it's because the fentanyl isn't 100% pure no more. Fentanyl is only probably about 40% pure now.
Yeah, that could be.
Interesting. Well, but I haven't had a chance to check them yet because I've been sick, but does anybody know what the overdoses were for November yet?
No.
I heard they went back up. Again, you're out there on the street, JJ. Are you seeing that medical examiner van as often as you used to be?
No, I haven't seen it that much lately.
Oh, that's a good sign.
It hasn't been many overdose
deaths in November 25, according to DPH.
What was the number again, Mike?
36.
Yeah, and majority of those 36 happened indoors.
Yeah.
And there are 34 in October, so that's still lower. So it may be what he's pointing out, that fentanyl is a little weaker now, and it may be because of the precursor drugs or the importation coming across the border is less. That's entirely possible.
Well, and we know one of those deaths in November was Stephen, the longtime friend of Better Soma, Adam of Deli Board. And, you know, he has a friend, Jessica, that I marvel every time I see her, although she's looking awful. But every time I see her, I marvel that she's managed to have a baby, continue doing drugs, and stay alive.
Yeah.
So, it's still pretty sad out there, but it's good to hear the numbers trending down. I just hope it's not because something stronger is coming.
Well, so far, looking at a Chronicle article from earlier this month, xylazine, which is a type of type similar to the drug that I mentioned earlier, and these are all non-opioid sedatives, currently, often referred to on the street as trank.
Oh, trank.
Yeah, and so far we in mid-November we had seen 22 deaths from trank as opposed to over 400 involving fentanyl. So it's out there. But
it's in the supply in San Francisco, or
it's in the supply, but not to a large amount yet.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't heard people arguing with people talking about this is not real, this is not strong. So I know it's a weak supply out there.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Wow, that's a something I hadn't heard, or I'm not out there as often on the street by any means as you, so that's a very interesting twist.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the update. And thanks for what you're doing out there, JJ, and for sticking it out and, being that, lens on the streets at night when most people wouldn't dare be out there, even including city officials. Every time I see one of your videos, I just am shocked at how this continues. I just can't understand. And all I can think of is my analogy that when you let the cat out of the bag, it becomes a tiger, and now it's so big it can't put it back in the bag.
Right.
Yeah. But what I can say, what else is going on the streets? They finally got the situation on Van Ness and Market, that's cleared. That whole area is cleared. I've been looking at it for the last 2 weeks. They're not around there no more.
Wow.
So that area is cleared up. All up Van Ness.
Wow. So how did that happen, and where did they go?
The Hondos stopped showing up. That's what happened. It wasn't the city. It was just the Hondos. They stopped showing up over there.
Did they stake out something new?
I don't know yet. I've been looking for it, but they're not over there.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So if they're not there, the people that get high is not there.
What, Mike?
They probably just contracted back to the 6th Street and the Tenderloin.
Yes, they did. It's a lot more back in the Tenderloin. Nighttime in the Tenderloin has picked back up. So it's crowded back up in there.
Wow, I wonder, is that because police were patrolling Van Ness a little more, or?
I think that could very well be, and I think if you listen to our mutual friend Randy Shaw, the Tenderloin has always been used as a sort of combat zone, a containment zone for these types of vices. They figure it's a safety valve. Let everybody do it there because nobody else in the rest of the city will see it.
Yeah.
That also speaks to unreported crime.
Yes.
And it's the kind of policy that I don't think we can afford anymore, quite frankly.
No. And frankly, bringing up Randy Shaw, I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with him because he also runs Tenderloin Housing Clinic, which is, again, in our first, in the series of Housing First, Morgue Second, he runs some of the worst offenders that have some of the highest overdose rates inside of his buildings. And, he's gotten mad at me and blocked me over the years for calling him the poverty pimp. But bottom line is he lives in a big mansion in Berkeley Hills. And, meanwhile, he's suddenly, Mr. Voice of Reason and chastising everybody else, but takes zero blame himself, which we know from that year-long piece that the Chronicle did. He should take plenty of the blame. We certainly put it on him in our article because the numbers don't lie. He can say, "Oh, that's not true," but the numbers don't lie. And again, Tenderloin Housing Clinic is I think number 2 most deaths inside their buildings. And we have a great person out there, Blue Oz, who follows, because he lives in one of his buildings. He follows that the stuff going on in his buildings, and there's lots and lots of bad stuff happening, from drug use to drug sales, assaults. He had a really disturbing video of a guy going door to door after the city sent out their, $500 gift cards for whatever they were. Was it 500, JJ, or it was maybe less? But they had
Something less.
200, and this guy was going door to door telling everybody in the building that the convenience store across the street was offering $125 cash for those debit cards. So they get their cash, they get more drugs, and again, the city, along with it, Randy and others. I mean, the city enables. They just do. Giving a debit card that can be turned into cash to drug tourists is just not a way to get rid of them. Number one, it's also a way to get rid of them because they're going to overdose. So either way you look at it, they're going to stick around until they die. And that's basically, as Gary Tan says all the time, basically we have a culture in San Francisco where you help them do drugs until they die.
Yeah.
And on that sunny note.
Yeah, and I was about to say that I'm going to need to log off because I need to take some spooky pictures of public schools.
Public schools.
I also must leave now, but thank you very much for having us.
Yes, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you not next week, but the week after. Have a great Sunday.
Indeed. Have a great Sunday.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.